The first time I held my sister's baby, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Her name was Lily, a perfect tiny thing swaddled in a soft pink blanket that smelled of milk and innocence. My sister, Maya, placed her in my arms with a beaming smile, the kind of smile that expects you to melt into a puddle of adoration. Our whole family was cooing around us in my parents' living room, the air thick with celebration and the scent of the rose bouquet on the coffee table. "Isn't she just a dream, Chloe?" Maya whispered, her eyes shining with a fierce, maternal pride. I looked down at the baby. She had a full head of dark, silky hair, and her little rosebud mouth was pursed in sleep. She was, by all accounts, a beautiful child. But as I gazed at her, a strange and unsettling feeling began to crawl up my spine. It was more than just the familiar pang of grief I'd felt around newborns ever since my own journey to motherhood had failed. This was different. This was a cold, sharp note of recognition in a song I had never heard before. Lily's eyes fluttered open. They were a startling shade of hazel flecked with gold and green, an exact mirror of the eyes I had stared at for hours in a photograph, in a file, in a dream. My breath caught in my throat. I gently brushed my thumb over the baby's left earlobe, and there it was, a tiny faint brown mole no bigger than a pinprick. The donor profile had described it as a unique identifying mark. Donor number 734. The artist from Oregon who loved hiking and had her grandfather's hazel eyes. The woman whose future child I had already named in my heart. My hands began to tremble. I could feel the blood draining from my face. Maya's smile faltered as she looked at me. "Chloe, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't speak. The baby in my arms felt impossibly heavy, a stolen star fallen from my own private sky. I looked from the child's familiar eyes to my sister's face, searching for an explanation. Then I looked past her across the room where my ex-husband Liam stood watching us. He wouldn't meet my gaze. He just stared at his shoes, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, a portrait of guilt. In that moment, amidst the cheerful chaos of a family celebration, the horrifying pieces of a puzzle I had never known existed began to click into place. This wasn't just my sister's baby. This was the ghost of my baby, and I was the only one in the room being haunted. Before the ghosts, my life was a symphony of quiet, hopeful moments. Liam and I had a love that felt like coming home. We'd met in our late 20s, and our connection was immediate, grounded in shared laughter and a mutual desire for a simple, meaningful life. We bought a small house with a sprawling garden, and while I filled the inside with books and art, he filled the outside with peonies and hydrangeas. He was a landscape architect, a man who coaxed beauty from the earth. I was a grant writer for a local arts council, a woman who found beauty in words. Our dream, the one we whispered about on quiet nights, was to fill the house with more than just books and flowers. We wanted the pitter-patter of little feet, the crayon drawings on the refrigerator, the messy, beautiful chaos of a family. But a year into our marriage turned into 2, then 3, and the second pink line on a pregnancy test remained an elusive mirage. The quiet hope in our home slowly gave way to the sterile silence of doctors' offices. The antiseptic smell of clinics replaced the scent of Liam's garden. Our infertility journey was a slow descent into a world of acronyms I never wanted to learn. IIFSH IVF. Through it all, my sister Maya was my anchor. She was 2 years younger, my opposite in many ways. She was the spontaneous, free-spirited one, while I was the structured, cautious one. But our bond was absolute. When a treatment failed, she was the one who would show up at my door with a bottle of wine and a terrible movie, ready to listen to me cry without offering empty platitudes. "It's not fair, Maya." I'd sob into her shoulder after another negative result. "I know, sweetie. I know," she'd murmur, her hand stroking my hair. "But you're the strongest person I know. You and Liam will get through this. You will be a mother." Her belief in it was so unwavering that sometimes it was the only thing that kept my own belief alive. She was there for every injection, every blood draw, every crushing phone call from the nurse. Liam was steadfast and loving, but he processed his grief quietly, often losing himself in the garden for hours. Maya was the one I could share the raw, messy, undignified parts with. She knew the names of my nurses, the exact timing of my hormone shots, and the deep, aching desire in my heart. She was the keeper of my most vulnerable secret, the deep, dark fear that my body had failed me, and that I would never hold a child of my own. After 2 failed IVF cycles using my own eggs, the doctor sat us down in his quiet, beige office. He spoke in gentle, clinical tones, but his words felt like stones dropping into a deep well. "Advanced maternal age," he said. diminished ovarian reserve. He suggested we consider an egg donor. The idea was a blow. It felt like admitting defeat, like one final, irrevocable failure of my own body. Liam squeezed my hand, his knuckles white. "Whatever you want to do, Chloe," he whispered. "I'm with you." That night I wept. Maya held the phone to her ear for over an hour, just listening. "It's not giving up," she said softly, her voice a lifeline in the dark. "It's just finding a different door to the same room. The room where you're a mom." Her words gave me the courage to open the donor catalog. It felt strange and voyeuristic, scrolling through profiles of anonymous women, reducing them to their eye color, their hobbies, their genetic histories. I spent weeks searching, my heart aching for a connection that felt right. Liam tried to help, but he could see how personal the search was for me. He'd bring me tea and sit with me in silence as I scrolled. And then I found her, donor number 734. Her file had a photo, a candid shot of a young woman with a vibrant, intelligent face, laughing into the camera. She had these incredible hazel eyes, flecked with gold, and a smile that seemed to radiate warmth. She was an artist, a painter from Oregon. She loved hiking, played the cello, and wrote that she wanted to help a family experience the joy she had known in her own. Her medical history was perfect. Her family history was full of longevity and creativity. But it was the little detail at the end of her physical description that sealed it. A tiny mole on her left earlobe. It was just like the one my grandmother had. Felt like a sign, a whisper from the universe. "I found her, Maya," I said on the phone, my voice trembling with a hope I hadn't felt in years. "I really think this is her." I read her entire profile aloud to my sister. I described her hazel eyes, her love for art, and the little mole on her ear. I told her how it felt like fate. Maya was ecstatic for me. "Oh, Chloe, that's wonderful. Feels right. I can feel it." We moved forward. We paid the substantial, non-refundable deposit to the agency to reserve donor number 734. We covered the costs of the medical screenings and the legal fees. It was a small fortune, our entire savings, but it felt like the most critical investment we would ever make. We had a plan. We had a date for the egg retrieval. For the first time in a long time, the future felt bright again. But a week before the scheduled retrieval, the clinic called. The donor had a family emergency. She had to withdraw. The news shattered me. It was a professional, impersonal call, but it felt like a death. The agency offered to find us another donor, to roll over our deposit. But I was inconsolable. It wasn't about an egg. It was about her egg. It was about donor number 734. The artist with the hazel eyes and the mole on her ear. It felt like the universe had dangled a perfect dream in front of me, only to snatch it away. That loss was the final straw for my marriage. The grief was a chasm that had been slowly widening between Liam and me for years. And this final disappointment was the earthquake that made it too wide to cross. Our sadness, which had once been a shared burden, now isolated us. He retreated to his garden and I retreated into myself. 6 months later, we agreed to a divorce. It was quiet and amicable, filled with a profound sense of sorrow for all the things we had lost, including each other. I never spoke of donor number 734 again. The file was a closed chapter, a painful memory I buried deep. Maya was there through the divorce, helping me pack up Liam's things and paint my bedroom a new color. He was my rock, my confidant, my best friend, and all the while she was sleeping with my husband. The year after the divorce was a blur of quiet rebuilding. I sold the house with the beautiful garden. It held too many ghosts, and moved into a small apartment in the city. I poured myself into my work at the Arts Council, finding solace in the creativity of others. I slowly, carefully began to stitch my life back together. Maya was a constant presence. She'd call every day, invite me out for coffee, and gently nudge me back into the world. Our conversations were my safe harbor. We talked about everything: my new apartment, my work, the tentative steps I was taking back into dating. But looking back, I can see the subtle shifts, the little omissions that should have been red flags. She stopped talking about her own dating life. Maya, who always had a dramatic story about a new guy, suddenly had nothing to say. "Oh, just working a lot," she'd say vaguely when I asked. "No one interesting." Then she started canceling our plans at the last minute. Our weekly coffee dates became sporadic. "So sorry, Chloe, something came up at work," she'd text. Or, "Feeling under the weather, let's reschedule." I attributed it to her busy job as a freelance graphic designer. I never once suspected she was lying. The first real clue came during a call with our mother. "It's so lovely that Maya and Liam have stayed so close," Mom said casually one afternoon. I froze, my hand clutching the phone. "What do you mean?" "Oh, she said, oblivious to the bomb she had just dropped. "He's been helping her with her garden. He was over there all weekend putting in those rose bushes she wanted. It's just so nice that there's no bad blood after the divorce." A A real testament to you both. My blood ran cold. Liam was at Maya's house all weekend. Maya hadn't mentioned a garden project. She had told me she was working on a tight deadline and couldn't even talk on the phone. When I confronted her, her voice was light and dismissive. "Oh my God, I totally forgot to tell you," she laughed, a sound that seemed just a little too high-pitched. "Yeah, Liam offered to help me with the backyard. You know I have a black thumb. It was no big deal. I didn't want to make it weird by bringing it up." "It's not weird, Maya," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I just wish you'd told me." "I'm sorry, sweetie. It honestly slipped my mind," she said, her voice dripping with sincerity. "It was completely platonic. He's like a brother to me, you know that." I wanted to believe her. My sister and my ex-husband? The idea was so monstrous, so far outside the realm of possibility, that my mind refused to entertain it. She was my rock, my other half. She would never betray me like that. So I pushed the unease down. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my own grief and loss were making me see shadows where there were none. A few months later, Maya called me with news. She was pregnant. The joy in her voice was overwhelming. "I can't believe it, Chloe." It was a total surprise. A one-night stand that turned into, well, this. A wave of complex emotions washed over me, a sharp pang of my own familiar grief, but also genuine happiness for my sister. "Maya, that's amazing," I managed to say. "Who's the father?" There was a slight hesitation. "He's not in the picture," she said quickly. "It was complicated. He's not going to be involved. I'm going to do this on my own." I felt a surge of protectiveness for her. A single mother. It would be hard, but Maya was strong. "I'm here for you," I said, my voice firm. "Whatever you need. You won't be alone." "I know," she whispered, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "Thank you, Chloe. It means the world to me." For the next 9 months, I was the perfect supportive sister. I accompanied her to ultrasound appointments, helped her select a crib, and threw her a beautiful baby shower. I watched her belly grow and felt a quiet, bittersweet joy. Liam was noticeably absent from all family functions during this time. He was traveling for work, our mother explained. I was so focused on Maya and her miracle baby that I barely registered his absence. The betrayal was a serpent, coiled and sleeping right at my feet, and I, in my blind love and trust, had been gently stroking its head the entire time. The baby shower was the last day of my innocence. It was a beautiful affair in my parents' backyard, under the shade of the old oak tree. The air was filled with laughter, the scent of my mother's baking, and the soft rustle of gift wrap. Maya was radiant, glowing. She sat in a wicker chair like a queen, her hands resting on her round belly. I gave her a handmade quilt, one I had started for my own baby that I never had. I'd finished it in shades of yellow and green, an unisex offering for her surprise. As she unwrapped it, tears filled her eyes. "Oh, Chloe," she whispered, clutching it to her chest. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." I smiled, my heart aching with a familiar mix of love and loss. I was overjoyed for her, fiercely protective of the new life she was bringing into the world. Then my Aunt Carol, never known for her subtlety, cornered me by the drink table. "It's a shame Liam couldn't be here," she said, stirring her iced tea. "He and Maya have been practically inseparable. I see his truck at her house all the time. Such a good friend to her, especially now." Her words hung in the air, heavy and dissonant. Inseparable. The word echoed the cold dread I had felt months ago. I looked over at Maya, laughing with our cousins. Then I thought of Liam, my quiet, gentle ex-husband, who had supposedly been on a long-term work project in another state for the past 6 months. That night I couldn't sleep. The serpent of doubt was awake now, and its coils were tightening around my chest. I did something I had never done before. I opened my laptop and typed Liam's name into Facebook, a platform he rarely used. His profile was dormant primarily, but he was tagged in a recent photo. It was posted by one of his old college friends. The picture was taken at a weekend barbecue which had occurred 2 weeks prior. There were 5 people in the photo smiling around a picnic table. On the far right was Liam, and standing next to him, her hand resting possessively on his arm, her pregnant belly proudly on display, was my sister, Maya. The caption read, "Great catching up with these 2 lovebirds. Can't wait to meet the little one." I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. Lovebirds. The word was a gunshot in the silent room. This wasn't a platonic friendship. This wasn't a surprise one-night stand. This was a long, calculated deception. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely control the mouse. I clicked on the profile of the friend who'd posted the picture. I scrolled through his public photos going back months. There they were again and again. Maya and Liam are at a Christmas market. Maya and Liam are hiking in the fall, her head on his shoulder. A picture of my ex-husband on one knee holding a ring up to my beaming, pregnant sister. The caption, She said yes. The proposal happened 3 months ago. I felt the air leave my lungs in a painful rush. The lies, the sheer volume of them, the secret trips, the cancelled coffees, the man who's not in the picture. My family, my own mother, must have known. They must have all been playing along, protecting Maya's secret, protecting me from a truth they thought would break me. But the final soul-crushing blow was yet to come. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I was a ghost in my own life, watching a horror movie unfold before me. A month later, Maya gave birth to a baby girl, Lily. Our mother called me with the news. She's perfect, Chloe. You have to come see her. So I went. I walked into that hospital room, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. And then I walked into my parents' living room for the welcome home party. I played my part. I smiled. I held the baby. And that's when I saw it. The hazel eyes. The mole on her ear. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. That night, after everyone had gone home, I went to the old wooden chest where I kept my memories. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Underneath the unfinished baby quilt and a pile of old letters, there was a folder, my IVF journey. I pulled out the file for donor number 734. I stared at her photo, taking in the description of her eyes, her love for art, and the unique mole on her left earlobe. A wave of nausea washed over me. How was this possible? My deposit was non-refundable, but it only reserved the donor for a specific cycle. It didn't give me ownership. Someone else could have chosen her. It had to be a 1 in a million coincidence. But the serpent of doubt whispered, there are no coincidences. I needed proof. I needed to know. The next day I called the fertility clinic. I identified myself and asked a simple, direct question. I know this is a strange request, I said, my voice shaking, but I just need to know if the cycle for donor number 734 from last spring ever went forward with another family. It would give me some peace of mind. The nurse was kind but firm. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but that is highly confidential information. I can't tell you anything about our donors or other patients. I understand, I said, my mind racing. But there was a non-refundable deposit. My ex-husband and I paid it. Liam Sterling. If the cycle didn't go through, we were told we might be eligible for a partial credit. It was a lie, a desperate gamble. There was a pause and the sound of typing could be heard. Let me check the account, the nurse said. Sterling, yes, I see the account. It looks like the credit from your cancelled cycle was applied to another cycle a few months later. My heart stopped. Which cycle? I whispered. More typing. It was applied to the account of Maya Bishop, my sister's name. The nurse continued, oblivious. The primary patient was Maya Bishop, and the partner listed is Liam Sterling. They completed a successful transfer last fall. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. I sank into a chair, the room spinning around me. They hadn't just stolen my husband. They had stolen my dream. They had taken the one specific hope I had clung to, the artist from Oregon with hazel eyes, and they had made her their own. The money I had paid, the emotional energy I had spent, the very essence of the child I had chosen in my heart. They had taken it all. The baby in my sister's arms wasn't just the child of her and my ex-husband. She was a ghost of the daughter I was supposed to have, brought into the world by the two people I had loved and trusted most. It wasn't a betrayal. It was an erasure. They had erased me from my own life and stepped into my place. The silence in my apartment after that phone call was absolute. It felt like the world had gone quiet, as if even the city outside was holding its breath. For a long time I just sat there staring at the wall. The grief was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. But underneath the grief, a new feeling was taking root. It was a cold, complex, and unfamiliar anger. It wasn't the hot, explosive anger I had imagined I would feel. It was a quiet, focused rage. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I made myself a cup of tea, my hands moving with a slow, deliberate steadiness I didn't know I possessed. I thought about Maya's beaming face, my mother's gentle encouragement to be happy for my sister, and Liam's cowardly, downcast eyes. They had built their happiness on the foundations of my most profound sorrow. They had taken my pain and used it as a stepping stone. My first impulse was to expose them, to call a family meeting and lay out the entire sordid story, to watch their faces as I revealed the depths of their deception. But what would that accomplish? It would be a messy, dramatic scene. There would be tears, denials, and manufactured excuses. My mother would try to play peacemaker, urging forgiveness for the sake of the family and the baby. They would paint me as the bitter, unstable sister, consumed by jealousy. They would use my own infertility against me, suggesting my grief was clouding my judgment. Though A public confrontation would give them power. It would make them the victims of my rage. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. My revenge, I decided, would be as quiet, deliberate, and devastating as their betrayal. I started with the money. The IVF journey had cost me my entire savings, a fund I had carefully built over the course of 15 years. The deposit, the fees, the consultations, it was a fortune. They had used my financial loss to fund their gain. So I would take it back. I hired a lawyer. Not a loud, aggressive divorce lawyer, but a quiet, meticulous contract lawyer with a specialty in medical and financial disputes. I sat in his sterile, modern office and laid out the facts, my voice never wavering. I showed him the bank statements with the withdrawals for the clinic fees. I showed him the agreement with the donor agency, signed by both me and Liam, and I told him about the phone call with the nurse, and how my financial credit had been applied to my sister's account. "This is highly irregular," the lawyer, Mr. Davies, said, his brow furrowed as he reviewed the document. "The credit should have been returned to the original account holders. Applying it to a third party, even with the consent of one of the original signatories, is a serious breach of protocol, especially without your consent. Liam must have authorized it," I said. "He was still legally my husband at the time, though we were separated." "That doesn't matter," Mr. Davies replied. "It was a joint asset from the marriage, intended for a specific purpose. You were co-signers. For him to unilaterally transfer that asset to a new cycle with a new partner, especially without your knowledge or written consent, is tantamount to financial fraud." That was the word I needed. Fraud. Mr. Davies drafted a letter. It wasn't addressed to Maya or Liam. It was addressed to the fertility clinic and the donor agency. The letter was a masterpiece of legal precision. It outlined the breach of contract, the misappropriation of funds, and the potential for a high-profile lawsuit that would expose their clinic to widespread negative publicity and scrutiny. It didn't mention the affair or the personal betrayal. It was cold, tricky business. We weren't asking for an apology. We were demanding full reimbursement of every dollar I had spent, plus damages for emotional distress caused by their gross negligence. While I waited for their response, I moved on to the second phase of my plan. The family. My mother called me, her voice full of cheerful chatter about the baby. "Chloe, you have to see Lily in her new outfit. She looks like a little doll. When are you coming over for dinner?" "I'm busy this week, Mom," I said, my voice polite but distant. "Oh, honey, you've been so busy lately. We miss you. Maya misses you. She's worried you're pulling away." I took a breath. "Mom, I have a question for you. When did you find out that Maya and Liam were together?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. What do you mean?" she stammered. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice still quiet but now edged with steel. "I know they were engaged before the baby was born. I know he's been living with her. When did you find out?" She sighed, a sound of weary defeat. "Chloe, honey, we didn't want to hurt you. Maya was so happy and you were so fragile after the divorce. We were going to tell you when the time was right." "When the time was right?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You mean after I had thrown her a baby shower? After I had oohed and awed over the baby? You all stood by and watched me grieve for a life I couldn't have, all the while knowing my sister was building that exact life with my husband behind my back. That's not protecting me, Mom. That's participating in the lie." "It was complicated," she whispered, her voice pleading. "No, it was simple," I replied. "You chose a side, and you didn't choose mine. So I'm going to make a simple choice too. I'm done. I'm done with the family dinners, the holidays, the pretense. You can have Maya and her perfect little family, but you can't have me." I hung up the phone before she could reply. My heart was pounding, but I felt a strange sense of release. I had severed the tie. I had refused to continue playing the part of the happy, supportive family member. I was drawing a boundary, not with anger, but with absence. My absence would be a question mark at every family gathering, a silence that would speak louder than any screaming match ever could. They would have to explain it. They would have to sit with the discomfort of my empty chair. The fallout was both swift and silent. The fertility clinic, faced with a meticulously documented legal threat and the specter of a public relations nightmare, folded immediately. Their legal team called Mr. Davies within a week. They offered a complete reimbursement of every penny I had spent on the entire IVF process, from the first consultation to the final non-refundable deposit. They also provided a significant five-figure sum for emotional distress and administrative negligence, contingent on my signing a non-disclosure agreement. I took the deal. It wasn't about profiting from my pain. It was about restitution. It was a symbolic act of reclaiming what had been taken from me. The money appeared in my bank account a week later, a silent testament to my first victory. I took the check from the law firm, folded it, and placed it in my purse without a word. The second consequence was the one that rippled through our family. My absence became a palpable presence. My mother called, she texted, she left tearful voicemails. I didn't respond. My father, a man of few words, sent me a short, simple email. "Your mother is heartbroken. We miss you. Please call us." I replied with equal simplicity, "I need space. I cannot be part of a family that is built on lies." The pressure then turned, as I knew it would, onto Maya and Liam. My empty chair at the Sunday dinner table, my silence in the family group chat, my non-attendance at Lily's christening. It all demanded an explanation. And the only reason was the truth. My cousin Sarah called me a few weeks later. "Chloe, what on earth is going on?" she asked, her voice a mixture of confusion and concern. "Your mom is a wreck and Maya is crying every time I talk to her. She said you won't speak to her because you're upset about her and Liam." I took a deep breath. I had decided not to be the one to spread the story, but I would not lie if asked directly. "It's more than that, Sarah," I said calmly. "Ask Maya about my IVF journey. Ask her about donor number 734. "The what?" "Just ask her," I said, and left it at that. The truth, when it finally came out, was a poison that seeped into the foundations of the happy family they had tried to build. Sarah asked Maya. Maya, I later heard, broke down and confessed the whole story. Not just the affair but the donor. The news spread through our extended family like a virus. The story was so specific, so monstrously cruel, that it was impossible to spin. There were no shades of gray. The family, which had once been united in a conspiracy of silence to protect me, was now fractured. Aunts and uncles who had smiled at Maya's baby shower now looked at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. My Aunt Carol, who had unwittingly given me one of the first clues, was apparently the most vocal of them all. "I always knew there was something off about her," she'd said to my mother. "But this is something a monster would do." Maya and Liam became social pariahs within our own family. The support system they had taken for granted evaporated. The invitations to barbecues and holiday parties dried up. They were left with a few loyalists, my parents, who were trapped by their love for both of their daughters. But the broader circle of family had passed its judgment. Liam, who had always been a quiet, gentle soul, couldn't handle the shame. His relationship with Maya, built on a foundation of shared secrets and deception, began to crumble under the weight of public scorn. He had wanted a happy, simple family life. Instead, he was living in a state of self-imposed exile, his own family barely speaking to him, his new partner a pariah. The final, most public consequence, however, was for Maya. She was a freelance graphic designer, and a large portion of her work came from a tight-knit community of small women-owned businesses, many of whom were friends and acquaintances of mine. I never said a word to any of them. I didn't have to. The story had a life of its own. One of my closest friends, who ran a successful online boutique and had used Maya for all of her branding, called me. "Chloe, I heard a rumor," she said, her voice hesitant. "I need to know if it's true." I told her the simple, unvarnished truth. 2 weeks later, my friend sent out an email announcing a complete rebrand, done by a new designer. Slowly, one by one, Maya's clients began to drop her. In a community that valued authenticity and female solidarity, her actions were unforgivable. Her business, which she had built over the years, began to wither. Her professional reputation was destroyed, not by my hand, but by the weight of her own choices. I felt a quiet, somber sense of justice. It wasn't glee. It was the solemn acknowledgement that actions have consequences. They had wanted to erase me to build their life in my place. But instead, their betrayal had backfired, erasing them from the community and the family they had taken for granted. They were left with each other and the ghost of the dream they had stolen. The aftermath of a war is never a victory parade. It's the long, quiet work of clearing the rubble and rebuilding. My war was over, but my healing was beginning. The money in my bank account was a form of justice, but it couldn't fill the hollow space in my heart. The isolation of Maya and Liam brought me a grim satisfaction, but it didn't bring me joy. I had cut myself off from my family, and while the distance was necessary, it was also a profound loss. The silence from my parents was a constant, low-grade A. I missed my mother's rambling phone calls and my father's quiet presence. I missed the familiar chaos of family dinners, even with the empty chair beside me. About a year after the discovery, I received a letter in the mail. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope, and I recognized my father's neat, architectural handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside wasn't a letter, but a photograph. It was a picture of Maya and me as children, probably 6 and 4 years old. We were in our backyard, our arms slung around each other, grinning gap-toothed smiles at the camera. We were inseparable, a unit. On the back, my father had written just 3 words: "She is your sister." I sat with that photograph for a long time, the tears I had held back for so long finally falling. He wasn't asking me to forgive her. He wasn't minimizing my pain. He was stating a fact that existed before the betrayal and would continue to exist long after. It was a quiet plea for me not to lose myself entirely in the anger, not to let them take my entire family from me. I decided to see a therapist. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. In her quiet, calm office, I was able to unpack the tangled knot of grief, anger, and loss. I learned that my boundary with my family was not a punishment, but a form of self-preservation. And I knew that forgiveness wasn't about absolving them. It was about releasing myself from the poison of resentment. My healing began in earnest when I made a choice. I decided to try to become a mother again, alone. I used the money from the settlement, which I had previously received, to fund a new journey. I went back to the donor agency, a different one this time. I spent weeks reviewing profiles, but from a different perspective. I wasn't looking for a sign or a ghost of a past dream. I was looking for a new beginning. I chose a donor who was nothing like the artist from Oregon. She was a scientist, practical and kind, with warm brown eyes. The process was long and arduous and filled with its own heartbreaks. But this time I wasn't alone in my grief. I had built a new family, a network of incredible friends who rallied around me, who held my hand, who celebrated every small victory and cushioned every fall. 2 years after I held my sister's baby in my arms, I had my own, a little boy with his donor's warm brown eyes and my own stubborn chin. I named him Samuel, which means, God has heard. Holding him for the first time, I finally understood what true peace felt like. It wasn't the absence of pain, but the presence of a love so profound it made the pain irrelevant. All the anger I had held towards Maya, towards Liam, just dissolved. It didn't matter anymore. They had their child and now I have mine. Their story had nothing to do with me anymore. When Samuel was 6 months old, I called my parents. My mother answered, and when she heard my voice, she began to sob. I didn't say much. I just said, Mom, I'd like you to meet your grandson. They came over the next day. They held Samuel and they cried, and in their tears, I saw not just joy, but remorse and a profound, unspoken apology. We didn't talk about Maya. We just focused on the new life in the room. We began to rebuild our relationship, slowly and cautiously, one visit at a time. I have not seen my sister. I'm not sure. Forgiveness for me meant letting go of the anger, not forgetting the betrayal. It meant choosing my own peace over the exhausting work of holding a grudge. My life is complete now. It is filled with the sound of my son's laughter, the warmth of my friends, and the quiet, steady love of my parents, who are learning to be the family I need them to be. The scars are still there. They always will be. They are a map of where I have been, but they are not who I am. I am a survivor. I am a writer. I am a friend. And most importantly, I am a mother. I took the ashes of the life they tried to burn down and I built a new world. A world filled with a love that is honest, true, and entirely my own. Some wounds are so deep they change the geography of your soul. The betrayal I endured carved a canyon through my life, a chasm that separated who I was from who I had to become. For a long time, all I could see was that space, the vastness of what had been taken from me. My trust, my husband, my family, my dream of a child, all of it seemed to have fallen into that abyss. But life, in its strange and persistent way, finds a way to grow even in the most broken landscapes. It took me a long time to realize that the canyon wasn't just a void. It was also a space to build something new. The work of healing is not about filling the hole and pretending it was never there. It's about learning to build a bridge across it. And on the other side, you find a strength you never knew you possessed. I learned that justice doesn't always come in a courtroom or a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it's the quiet internal click of a boundary locking into place. It's the calm decision to refuse to participate in a lie. It's the act of taking back your power, not by destroying someone else, but by rebuilding yourself. My most significant victory wasn't watching their lives crumble. It was watching my own begin to blossom again on my own terms. The love for a child is a fierce and holy thing. Maya, in her own twisted way, must have felt that. Perhaps her desire was so all-consuming that it blinded her to her own cruelty. I don't say that to excuse her. Her actions were monstrous. But I have to believe that even the most hideous acts are born from some deeply human, albeit broken place. Understanding that doesn't require forgiveness, but it does allow for a particular kind of peace. It will enable you to see the person who hurt you not as a villain in your story, but as the tragic hero of their own. My son, Samuel, is the epilogue to a story I thought had ended in tragedy. He is proof that a new dream can be born from the ashes of an old one. He will grow up knowing a smaller family, but one that is built on honesty and a hard-won peace. And he will see a mother who has learned that the most profound love is not something you are given, but something you dare to create for yourself. I often wonder about the nature of forgiveness. Is it a gift we give to others, or is it the key we use to unlock our own cage? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and your wisdom are a constant source of strength for me and for this community. If you found a piece of your own story in mine, please consider supporting the channel. Thank you for listening.